Hello, this is Joe Simhart, number 13 in my series, Cults in the Occulture. Today I'm going to tackle something that's a transcendent theme. It's called enlightenment, and the title will be, the banality of enlightenment. Anyone that's been on the seeker circuit since the 60s that I've known has centered on this idea of becoming enlightened through meditation, maybe through ingesting some kind of mushroom. Maybe they've been attracted to this guy, the Buddha, and read the teachings, picked up books about, like this one that came out in 1967, The Secret Oral Teachings of Tibetan Buddhist Sects by Alexandra David-Neel and Lama Yongden. So, this book here specifically talks about enlightenment and how to attain it and what it means in the Buddhist context. It says that you can make great effort, like climbing a mountain in order to get there the rapid way, or slow effort by doing deeds and rituals and going about your life. Most seekers are looking for instant enlightenment, like this cat getting zapped from some kind of wisdom from the sky. And so it goes. In all my research is in this and in examining cults that claim to sell enlightenment or to help you get there. I found that getting enlightened is no big deal. Even if you read the Buddhist scriptures, once he came upon this idea of how reality works through his system of cause and effect and his great middle way, which means that in the end that you shouldn't be attached to doing good works or doing bad works, that both ways can get you derailed from the sense of continuity with being, the river of life, and what came to be called nirvana, extinction. These are complicated terms. I don't want to get into explaining them, but the idea that I found was that even some kid taking mushrooms in his basement or smoking pot can come up with this idea that I am one with the universe and have that instant feeling of recognition of being God or being enlightened or whatever it is. But it's a fleeting thing, and we still have to deal with other issues. Becoming enlightened isn't necessarily great in the long run. We have, for instance, this book, Outrageous Betrayal by Pressman, about Werner Erhard and his rise and fall as he developed something called est, right, which is being. Again, I don't want to get into too much history here, but Erhard made a lot of money in what's called mass therapy trainings that started mainly in the early 70s, and we can see it today in dozens and dozens of types of organizations where the leader has some kind of enlightenment. Tony Robbins might be one of the most famous of the mass trainers. So what happened? Werner suddenly got enlightened one day driving on a highway, and he got what he called it, was kind of a Zen recognition that he saw of again from Buddhism, that he knew what was going on. And in this book by Pressman, we read, quoting Peter Martin about the Me Decade, clearly Erhard has a genius, not only for the efficacy and efficiency with which his program is organized and sold, but also for the accuracy with which he tells his audience what it wants to hear. It is the latter which binds them to him. The world is perfect. Each of us is all-powerful. Shame and guilt are merely arbitrary notions. Truth is identical to belief. Suffering is merely the result of imperfect consciousness. How like manna all this might seem to hungry souls. And again, getting this from Buddhism. I'm not saying it's a correct view of Buddhism, but he gets it from there. This idea of suffering is merely a result of imperfect consciousness. For if we are each totally responsible for our fate, then all the others in the world are responsible for their fate. If that is so, why should we worry about them? So this fit right into what Tom Wolfe and others called the me generation, which was the third Great Awakening, the first being the Great Awakening in the 19th century in the United States. In the 1920s again, we had this me generation thing and a lot of interest in cults and fascism, communism, and all of that was going on in the debate in the country. And what can I get out of it was a big question. After World War II, there was a bit of sobering going on, working together, but sooner or later that generation, my generation that was born after World War II, started on this quest again, and which some people call the Third Great Awakening, which is still going on. But we can get trapped in these things just because we are enlightened or have this knowledge that some gurus are selling out there. Doesn't mean that everything is good. For instance, a lot of people believe that Tibetan Buddhism and the Tibetans have some kind of a secret power and knowledge that should be shared with the whole world, and that was the thesis of Alexandra David-Neel in all of her books. But despite her enlightened status about what Buddhism was, her personal behavior was anything but exemplary. She was difficult to live with, quite a bossy woman, and she lived to be 100, and anyone that was around her will explain and tell you exactly what her personality was like, difficult. So, we can become prisoners of Shangri-La or these images of enlightenment that we have in our heads, legend of what Tibetan Buddhism might be. For instance, this book by Donald Lopez explores this idea. It's called Prisoners of Shangri-La, and how we have been seduced by this kind of concocted image of Buddhism and what it is. And in a sense, we practice a kind of racism by elevating this idea and not knowing exactly how normal these people are in their struggles in everyday life. There's nothing especially more enlightened about Tibetan Buddhists than any other culture. At least that's what the author is saying. So to finish up, in philosophy, you explore many things, but some people break down philosophy as an exploration of three things, and that's problems of knowledge, problems of conduct, and problems of governance. And this is where the problem comes in. Once enlightened, then you have to determine how you're going to conduct yourself, how you're going to behave. And we can see that Werner Erhard being enlightened wasn't any big deal because he wasn't good at his personal conduct. And he certainly wasn't great at governance because he was running a business that was, by some standards, ripping people off. In fact, in his book here, again, Pressman says, in a chapter called Surrender to Source, Werner Erhard's ugly and abusive treatment of his family was always covered up with public displays of loving relationships between Erhard and his wife and children. And he goes on to explain where the evidence for that is. And we find this behavior in a lot of cult leaders, and their followers will excuse the behaviors, saying, well, he's enlightened, I'm getting all this out of it, it's doing a lot for me, I don't care what he does in his private time. And then governance, how cults are formed, and then an us-them mentality is maintained, and people don't realize that what they believe is a high enlightened path is now really just some kind of a rut that they're in, maybe until they leave. So even the founder of philosophy, Pythagoras, who was considered himself the first philosopher, lover of wisdom, he gleaned a lot of enlightened ideas out of Egypt and the East and developed great theories in music and mathematics. The Pythagorean theorem is named after him. And he started a kind of a cult in his area down there in ancient Greece. People were upset about the group in the city that he was in. He wasn't a great governor. They rebelled. He was exiled. You know, so despite all his enlightenment, he wasn't really great in terms of personal conduct. He was kind of elitist, and so were his followers. And as a result, those people that didn't quite grasp how enlightened he was weren't very happy with the way he was governing. So anyway, these are the problems that come up once somebody is enlightened. You know, you have to ask questions. How do they conduct themselves? And how good are they at governance? Being enlightened doesn't necessarily make you a good person. So I'm going to leave it at that. Thank you.